Now, if a journalist says something that is later proven to be wrong, I think it is their obligation under the ethical code of journalism to correct that. And if she hasn't done that, then there are legitimate concerns that she should correct the record. That's what good journalists do.
So, about a month or so ago, I made a video about 4chan and how they were starting to dictate the message because they're creating these hoaxes that journalists just believe. The story was a reporter named Emma Roller tweeted out that this meant some kind of white supremacy was some kind of white supremacy hand gesture. She tweeted out a photo of Mike Cernovich and Cassandra Fairbanks, said that they were making a white power hand gesture in the White House. It got over 6,000 shares, the tweet went viral. Needless to say, I was pissed. I tweeted, "Journalism is dead." Because this does not mean anything to do with white power. The reason so many Trump supporters make this sign in photos is that when Trump talks, he does this. So people started doing the same thing in photographs. At some point, 4chan decided to say that this was white power, the W and a P, which it is not. Now, Emma Roller tweeted that it was, and following that, she tweeted some other things she tweeted out a link to the Anti-Defamation League saying that it was, in fact, considered by the Anti-Defamation League to be a white power hand gesture. However, a few days later, the Anti-Defamation League came out and said, no, it is not. The latest development, Cassandra Fairbanks is suing Emma Roller for defamation, false light. I'm not a legal expert, a lawyer or anything, but there's a lawsuit that has been filed. Emma has not yet been served. Now, Fusion is the company where Emma works, but they're saying that this is frivolous, it's a publicity stunt. However, Cassandra and her lawyer are complaining that journalists are using the First Amendment as a sword and not a shield. So they're looking for a monetary sum to be determined by the court and a retraction. We'll see what happens, but I'll say this. It's a very, very interesting issue. Many journalists have immediately sided with Emma Roller. And they're saying that Cassandra Fairbanks is far right, she's extreme right. So the question I actually have many questions. As far as I'm concerned, Emma Roller is an anti-Trump reporter for a left-wing outlet, and Cassandra Fairbanks is a pro-Trump reporter for a right-wing outlet. So you can either just call them reporters, or you can preface their political alignment. But many outlets are simply saying Cassandra is pro-Trump, and Emma Roller is a journalist. But the right is saying that Cassandra is a new media journalist, and Emma Roller is a lefty. I'm going to meet with Tim Karr of the FreePress. This is an organization that protects communication and journalism, and I want to see what they actually feel about this case. Does Cassandra have a leg to stand on? Is Emma Roller in the wrong? We're gonna find out. And the last thing I'll say is full disclosure, I'm actually friends with Cassandra, so just so you know, we'll see what happens. So right now, I am in Hoboken, New Jersey with Tim Karr, and you can just introduce yourself.
Yeah, Tim Karr, I'm the Senior Director of Strategy with FreePress, and we work on digital rights issues, we work on free press issues. We're very involved in the net neutrality debate, for example, and have been for the last 10 years. And that's the sort of work we do. We really represent the interests of media users, people who use the media, and oftentimes that pits us against very large media institutions, owners of cable companies, phone companies, consolidated media outlets.
But free press, right? That's who you are. So yes. Press freedom is obviously a huge part of what you do. So right now, this is breaking yesterday apparently. I think a lot of people have known it was probably going to happen. Cassandra Fairbanks, she is a pro-Trump writer for a right-wing website, has filed a lawsuit against Emma Roller from Fusion, which is a left-wing website. And now there's, Twitter erupted with right-wing audience, right-wing people saying, good, it's about time that people stood up to this slander, and the left saying this is a frivolous lawsuit. The right is trying to harass the left.
Right.
Let me just ask you, what is your take on the whole thing? If you have, if there's like a basic introduction to it or something.
Sure. I mean, I would agree with the position that believes this is a frivolous. It seems more like a publicity stunt to me. I mean, I think when you're someone like Fairbanks understands that we really live in an attention economy, and it's not so much what you do; it's how much press, how much attention you get in social media and traditional media around this. And this strikes me as a publicity stunt, and not a genuine effort to launch a legal battle that has any real merit.
I can probably cut that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but were you able to read the complaint that she filed?
I've read some of the complaint. The thing that's interesting about it, according to Roller's attorney, the complaint was not sent to Roller. It was only sent to BuzzFeed, which indicates, in my thinking, that this is about publicity and it's not about true legal action. The attorney representing Roller had to actually contact BuzzFeed to get the complaint and made a statement to the effect that it had no merit. It was a publicity stunt, and that he intends to defend Roller's actions under the First Amendment to the full extent of the law. So again, it's interesting. Certainly, it's interesting how there is this battle over the First Amendment, and I think that's a really interesting discussion we should be having. And we live at a time in social media where hate speech has become more prevalent. I mean, perhaps prevalent's not the right word, but it's become more visible. Right? Social media allows a lot of this what's called hate speech to become more widely documented, and there are First Amendment issues around that are surfacing as well. And I think this is a part of that larger discussion, but it's also in my mind really about generating publicity in a world where publicity is an end unto itself.
But don't you think? So if you read the complaint, the basics are that Emma Roller tweeted something that was factually incorrect. She then tweeted again a link to the Anti-Defamation League, which was also factually incorrect.
Right.
Then she even commented that she knew that there was a hoax going around trying to make people believe this. And after this tweet went viral and she was corrected and it became a huge issue, even after the Anti-Defamation League published a blog saying this is incorrect, Emma Roller did nothing.
Right.
And so they're claiming that the only action she took was as soon as she became aware of the lawsuit. Would you say that Cassandra Fairbanks, who is being accused of making a white supremacy hand gesture, I mean, she's a mixed race person, has a right to defend herself or fight back?
Certainly she has a right to defend herself, but what she has done is wrapped herself in the First Amendment and saying that she has the First Amendment right to silence the views of others. This is not particular to this one instance. Even in the statements that she has made, she's identified the First Amendment as something that only helps establishment media. It helps the elite. And I happen to disagree with that. And so I think that, on a legal basis, that has no merit. Now, if she were to pursue this as a libel case, there may be something there, but she has chosen the First Amendment as her legal vehicle here. And that's where I have an issue.
So I guess the question then becomes, what Emma Roller tweeted and her subsequent tweets were factually incorrect. That's not in dispute. I mean, even the Anti-Defamation League came out and said she was incorrect. Yeah. So then is the issue then that Cassandra is alleging Emma Roller was malicious, and that the defense of Emma Roller would be that she was ignorant? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That in the suit, they're saying that Emma Roller was either reckless and negligent, or was maliciously trying to malign Cassandra.
Right.
And then I guess what I'm seeing from a lot of people, journalists supporting her, saying is that she was made unaware that this hoax was occurring and genuinely believed it was a white supremacy hand gesture.
Right. And I don't know. I honestly don't know where that comes down. My concern again is that this has been built on a First Amendment basis, and that's where it is frivolous in my view. Now, if a journalist says something that is later proven to be wrong, I think it is their obligation under the ethical code of journalism to correct that. And if she hasn't done that, then there are legitimate concerns that she should correct the record. That's what good journalists do. Now, should she be brought before court and especially in a complaint that alleges that this somehow is a violation of the First Amendment rights of Fairbanks. That's where, in my mind, this falls apart.
The interesting thing to me is that we're seeing the left. They're calling this a journalist being sued by a pro-Trump writer, and the right is saying a journalist is suing a left-wing writer. It's or an anti-Trump writer. Why can't it just be, it's an Emma Roller is visibly anti-Trump. She works for Fusion, and she's had she's obviously left-leaning. Cassandra, very obviously right-leaning. It seems like everyone's just trying to score points. You know what I mean?
I understand that.
Yeah.
And I think that every journalist has a certain degree of bias, and I think that we have to be transparent about that. And I think that's fine. There is this somewhat romanticized notion about objectivity in journalism that I don't subscribe to. I think they all have a level of bias, and that they need to be transparent about that. Now, if reporters are reporting on this story, and I honestly haven't seen a lot of reporting on it, I've seen some. If they're characterizing it as a biased journalist against an objective journalist, then that would be wrong. And let's put it all on the table.
Doing, right?
Let's just say who we are and where we're coming from, and what's going on here. And I think that some of the issues that will come forth is that, yes, they both have an agenda here. I think that Fairbanks' agenda here is more about getting more publicity for herself than it is really genuinely about righting a wrong, although she would probably argue otherwise.
But couldn't you say that maybe the publicity is, Cassandra actually tweeted out, it's not about the money, it's about sending a message, right?
Exactly.
Do you think that...
That is exactly my point.
Right.
And she is sending a message.
But
But she's using the courts, and she's using the First Amendment in a way that I find intellectually dishonest.
I want to preface this too. I want to say that, I worked for Fusion for 2 years, so I know a lot of people that I've talked to them, and I also am friends with Cassandra, so it's a really weird position for me.
Right.
But I have people on the right who call me a liberal, they call me a cuck. I have people on the left who call me a Nazi sympathizer or white supremacist. Right. Just the other day, someone was tweeting at me saying that my fascist agenda, and I actually align more, center left. I'm fairly moderate, but I'm from a big city. I'm relatively liberal. What is the recourse for? I guess I should say, so many people are being attacked every day, being called racists, white supremacists, and it's just not true.
Right.
Cassandra's a mixed race person, as am I, and I've seen people just the other day aligning the two of us as though she's a friend of mine. We don't work together or anything like that. How do you fight back against these lies that are coming from big media companies?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, right? It's like who controls the truth out there? And I think what happens is that you, as a media consumer, we often relied on traditional media to ferret fact from fiction, but we found over the years that that's a mistake. You can go back to 2003 and find how traditional media aligned with the Bush administration in their march to war. Again, they supported the argument that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which has subsequently been proven to be untrue. And so even the most established media outlets, the New York Times, the Associated Press, CNN, and the like, we're all a party to that lie. So what we have, and that was 2003. Fast forward 15 years, and we are now at a time where even this sort of fact checking is even under larger threat from a community of social media people who are putting their opinions out. So the real issue is that media consumers, the people who not only read the news and watch television but are active in social media, have to become their own judges. And it requires a little bit more work on our part, vetting facts, double-checking sources, looking for political bias, taking a moment before you see something on social media and are inclined to forward it to the rest of the world. Take a moment, take a breath, and actually figure out what the agenda might be behind that news item. And that's a tall order, right? Yeah. We're not, you can't expect all of us to take media literacy courses. But if we are really interested in being a part of this public conversation, we have to take that time because there's so much misinformation out there, and there is so many people with a political agenda out there, and you just have to become more aware of it.
So I guess, this tweet from Emma Roller, 6,200 and some odd retweets, thousands of likes. Soledad O'Brien retweeted it. The Independent picked up the story. Fox News picked up the story. What should Cassandra do to stop the spread of the defamation, the false information?
I think that she should do what everybody else is doing, is identify it as fake news. And in fact, if it is on Twitter, if it is on Facebook, even these companies, believe it or not, and I'm not a huge fan of Facebook or Twitter, but they are doing more to try to identify false narratives, and so they've been putting in place systems, Facebook most notably, to vet fake news, to identify it and call it out. So it's not the perfect solution, but there are ways to combat fake news that we have today that we didn't have, say, in the middle of 2016 during the elections.
One of the challenges I'm identifying, though, is Facebook, what they're doing is they're going to big media outlets and saying you can decide what is fake and what's not.
That's true.
And just the other day, not the other day, but several days ago, the Washington Post put out I would call it a fake news story. I would say legally they towed the line perfectly. They insinuated that Kim.com was hacking Cernovich's Gmail.
Right. And
anyone with any lick of computer knowledge knows that it was almost entirely made up, what they were alleging.
Right.
But these big companies are supposed to be the arbiters of truth, as like even
that's true, and that's true, and that's a problem, and Facebook needs to consider that. They also have functions that allow Facebook users to identify and make submit complaints, but the problem is that the ultimate adjudicators for the large part are Facebook staffers, who have their own agenda. Many of them aren't journalists, and they don't understand, the kind of context in which this news often exists, and their partnership with what are considered mainstream news outlets. Yeah. It's problematic. I agree, but I do think that at least we've recognized the problem, which I say, if you were to talk to me a year ago, in the middle of the 2016 election campaign, people we weren't really having this discussion about fake news and how it proliferates through social media and how it's being manipulated by interested parties, and whether they have bots that forward comments, or what have you. We're now more aware of it, and we're now hopefully moving in a direction where not only the gatekeepers of news and information, traditional media outlets like the New York Times, Associated Press, and even Facebook really is becoming a traditional media outlet, even though they don't want to admit that. They are not the sole arbitrators, the sole gatekeepers of news and information, and that people like you and me, who are news junkies, but others are also getting involved in a way that raises the level of consciousness around this issue, and hopefully makes people more aware of their obligations as news consumers to ferret fact from fiction.
That's what I usually tell everybody. I usually say to everybody, and I'll say to you now, just read as much as you can. Don't just pick one site and think that's going to get you everything. And I encourage people to read left and right. Don't just discredit Fox News right off the bat. Don't just discredit MSNBC. Read them both, because you can see where their biases are.
Sure.
And then try and figure out for yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I
everyone
spend hours every morning going through. I have the New York Times comes to my doorstep every day. I pick it up, put it in the recycling bin. I go online and I use news filters. I have a Twitter list that I use, which is very good.
Wait, are you paying for the New York Times?
I am paying for the New York
Times. In the garbage?
I believe in the principle that we have to pay for journalism, and I have a Twitter. I have all these other filters that I go through, which have people represented from all sides of the issue, and I look at those, and then hopefully you take the time, and it's a lot to ask, obviously, but if you really want to be a part of this discourse, and if you really want to participate in the 21st century, political debates, I think that's what you have to do, and as you know, it takes a lot of time.
Last question: you think Cassandra will win or lose?
I don't think the case will go forward. I think it's just a publicity stunt. I think she'll win, and that she'll get publicity. She's already getting a considerable amount of that, and in my opinion, that's her goal, and publicity generates more attention. We've seen with other political actors on the right and left making outlandish statements.
Getting a lot of attention.
Look at Alex Jones. Look at
he got into a fight with the Young Turks at the was it the RNC?
It was political theater, and political theater often drives the debate, and it determines who the spokespeople are. And Cassandra is clearly making a bid to be a part of that.
I'm always in the middle. I see Cassandra's point in trying to fight back against being wrongfully slandered, or libeled.
Sure.
And I also recognize I believe what I believe is that the lawyer is in it for the publicity, and Cassandra's in it for the politics. I guess, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But
it's kind of a toxic combination, but yes.
You know what? I don't think it's unique to them. I think
I agree. But I look at it and I go, yeah, the lawsuit is just the stage on which other issues are playing themselves out.
Yeah.
And it's something that will get attention in the news, and we'll see how it goes forward. I'm very skeptical that a court of law will take it seriously. I could be proven wrong. But,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
If you like the video, click the like button. It really does help the channel. Comment below and let me know what you think. How do you feel about Cassandra's lawsuit with Emma Roller of Fusion? Do you think she's going to win? Do you think she is justified in doing it? I'd love to hear what you think. Subscribe for new videos every day at 4 p.m. and I will see you all tomorrow.